Virginia had become a defendant in one of the 5 cases folded into Brown v. Board of Education, owing to the determination of one teenager who had had enough. Tired of taking classes in tar paper shacks in an overcrowded hand-me-down high school in Prince Edward County, one of the state's former plantation communities, Barbara Rose Johns led a 2-week-long strike by her fellow high school students, some 450 in all, to demand a better school. The niece of the Reverend Vernon Johns, the radical minister who later mentored the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., Barbara Johns never consulted her Montgomery uncle about the strike she was planning. Instead, the studious girl with sparkling eyes and a luminous smile looked to her favorite teacher, Ms. Inez Davenport. The students in Miss Davenport's afternoon class regularly complained that it wasn't fair that they attended classes in jury-rigged structures without indoor plumbing that passers-by imagined to be chicken coops. Students contended with leaky roofs, wood stoves, rickety furnishings, and cast-off textbooks from white schools. The white students attended a new high school, replete with science labs, indoor plumbing, steam heat, and a well-stocked library and gym. One day in the fall of 1950, when her students were again bemoaning the miserable state of their school, Davenport shared with them a news article about some Massachusetts students who had gone on strike and won over an issue that concerned them. "If they could do that, so could you," she said. Intrigued, Barbara stayed after class to ask whether her teacher really meant what she had said. Strikes were often in the news then, bringing American workers better wages and new powers. But Barbara had never imagined that students might strike too. That afternoon exchange was the beginning of a secret student-teacher collaboration that shook Virginia's Jim Crow system as nothing else had before. The black parents in the PTA had again and again visited the superintendent of schools and the school board in their quest for school improvements. A 1947 State Board of Education survey supported their case, finding Robert Russa Moton High School inadequate, especially with enrollment sure to rise now that the post-war baby boom was underway. The petitioners could at least get a hearing now because, thanks to a push by the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, for equalization of black and white schooling, Southern officials knew that federal courts were beginning to look askance at their claims to provide separate but equal education. But winning upgrades was another matter, because Virginia's poll tax made it hard for low-income parents to hold elected officials accountable for neglect of their children. Like many other Southern states, Virginia required voters to pay a tax to participate in the local process, and it was one of the states that also made that tax cumulative, so that if, say, 2 elections had not featured candidates who interested you, but the third one did, you would have to pay all 3 years' taxes to vote. In areas like Prince Edward County, which had large numbers of impoverished black farm workers, the poll tax had proven an effective way to keep them from influencing policy. So the parents had to beg, and county leaders were not persuaded that black students' education merited raising more money. In self-justification, the officials would always talk about the Negro tax contribution being so low, only about 1/10 of the county's total revenue from property taxes, said M. Boyd Jones, Moton's principal. They expected us to raise our incomes without improving education. A better black high school would require either tax increases or a bond issue, neither of which white voters would support, because their children were well provided for in their own schools. Anyway, officials reasoned, why do more for colored kids capable only of work in the fields, kitchens, or factories? The white folks making these judgments sought no understanding of the kids whose futures they were so casually writing off. Collective organization, including strikes, was how the disempowered became strong enough to right the balance against the elites, who lorded over them in those days, as an avid reader like Barbara knew. So the seed planted by Miss Davenport grew. As a member of the chorus, the debating team, the drama club, and the student council, Barbara traveled the state and saw enough of other schools to believe it was worth a try. Miss Davenport's vision was straightforward. If the kids went on strike, the school board would get the message. These kids are serious. Let's build them a better school. But she also knew that a strike could put her own and perhaps others' jobs at risk. Teachers had no union protection then against retaliatory firing, so she told Barbara that they could no longer be seen talking one-on-one. They must communicate in writing through notes placed in a music book on Miss Davenport's desk. It was all so unheard of and daring, and therefore dangerous in Jim Crow, Virginia, that they destroyed the notes after reading them. Absolute secrecy was essential, Miss Davenport insisted from the outset, as was orderly and respectful conduct of the strike.